All right, everybody, welcome back to the Millennial Sales Podcast. This is a show where young salespeople come to upgrade their personal development, advance in their careers, and get after it. I'm your host, TommyTahoe. This is episode 301. It's Tuesday. We're in the beginning of March. We're getting into it, and I'm stoked. And why am I so excited? Because we've got a legend. When I say legend, I mean legend in the building today for the podcast. Mark Roberge, absolutely one of the best guests that we've had on this show in the 300 plus episodes that we've got. If you don't know who Mark is, you may be living under a sales rock. He's currently the managing director at Stage 2 Capital. He's a professor at Harvard Business School. He was the former CRO over at Hubspot, and that's where we spend a lot of our story today, a lot of our conversation around his days at Hubspot. He started as one of the first hires. He was the first sales hire. I think he was employee number 3 or 4. And so he grew the company from $0 in revenue to over $100 million to over 10,000 customers. And from that first employee to over 400 employees across multiple countries. He wrote the sales acceleration formula, breaking down how he did that, which is a classic sales book that you should absolutely check out, especially if you are in or trying to get into sales leadership. Mark talked about his journey, talked about the days of going to school, going to grad school, business school, how he started at HubSpot, some of his entrepreneurial pursuits, his interest in faith and in psychology and in a lot of different things that have helped him, wellness and spirituality that help him stay focused. So it's a great episode. It's a great guest. You're going to learn a lot. I hope you do. If you do enjoy this podcast, one ask from you, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening, leave a review, tell a friend about it, and make sure you follow what I'm doing over on LinkedIn, Tom Alamo. I'm posting every single day. Without further ado, let's get it. The man, the myth, the legend, Mark Roberge. Let's go.
All right, next up on the Millennial Sales Podcast, we've got sales legend, fellow Bostonian, Mark Roberge. Mark, how are you?
Good, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Doing well. Excited to have you on and have this conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So a lot of folks have certainly heard of you from your HubSpot journey, see what you're doing at Stage 2, read your book, things like that. But I'd love to take the opportunity to really learn about the early days of your sales career. So just from doing some LinkedIn stalking, I saw straight out of school into Accenture, into the consulting world. So just curious, like where was your head at that point? Was it just like pick the, a well-paying, fairly safe job coming out of school, or where was your head kind of coming out of college?
Yeah, it's a good question, Tom. I do talk a lot about to my students these days because I was curious about that journey. A lot of it was very context driven on where the business economy and ecosystem was like then. If you even take a step before that, growing up, I was always like really good in math, got really good grades in math. So my grandparents and parents would have always told me I was going to be an engineer ever since I was like 7 and thought an engineer drove trains,
Yeah.
and then like just that's guy ended up majoring in that, doing mechanical. I really wish I did computer science, but I just gravitated toward mechanical at the time. And then what was weird about that was this is in the mid 90s. Entrepreneurship was not a thing. Like it's hard to conceptualize that in 2022, but it's like no one in my undergrad college was talking about becoming an entrepreneur. Yeah. It was like kind of a thing for like bored rich people, and so so that's why I didn't kind of do the startup thing. But I was interviewing for internships and the mechanical engineering internships were honestly like a bunch of like, and I don't want to offend anyone, but it was like, it was a lot of like aerospace and like, manufacturing jobs in the middle of the woods in a random state, it's and Accenture was like, come learn to code and like, we'll bill you out a big hour, big billion hours and then live in New York City. And like, it was just, I don't know, it contrasted quite a bit. So I got like the sole internship offer from my school at the firm and then joined full time. And then that kind of, you didn't ask, but like about 2 years later, obviously like during that journey, the late 90s happened, which was like just the crazy .com boom and bust. And during the boom part, I just watched everything in the papers was about, and news was about, all these internet startups, and I was finally like actually staffed on one at Accenture, and it was this one up in New Hampshire, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like it was just like people weren't wearing suits. You can dress however you wanted. You can work however you worked hard, but as many hours, whenever you wanted. And like, you felt like you were in, and there was upside and people were making money on their stock options, and you were changing the world, like you were in, and I was like, this is like my passion. And I jumped ship and joined a mobile startup, Vetro, that's on the site, on my LinkedIn profile, which was like a couple of Accenture partners that started it as a consulting company. A consulting company raised venture capital. That's how we had no idea how entrepreneurship worked back then. But that was kind of the journey there.
And I'm curious, so you were at Vetro for a little bit. Like, did you see immediate success? Obviously, you're a super intelligent guy, but like, what were the early days of that sales career like? It was probably before the day SDRs, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it was like, honestly, and I don't think, Roger Desai, the founder, remains a good friend. He wrote my recommendations at MIT when I went to business school. And I don't think he'd mind me saying, like, the firm had no idea how to sell. Like, I don't think the ecosystem knew how to sell. I mean, they had structured it like a consulting company. And honestly, looking back on the first couple of years, there was so much work created internally to structure the organization, and such a small percentage was actually spent talking to the market. It was, I don't know, it was just the days. It was the .com craze, and people were just getting money. I don't think we knew what we were doing as entrepreneurs. And I don't even think I named my role a sales role, even though I was out on some sales calls. So I was kind of like what you'd probably call like a sales engineer / account manager at the time. Maybe engagement manager was the right idea, because we're doing more projects. And so I got a little taste of it, but I didn't even think about myself doing sales. But I did think about myself doing entrepreneurship. And that company went through the boom bust, right? I think I joined as number 15. We scaled up to 200. 6 months later, we laid everyone else back down to 15. And I hung on for a couple years and kind of had a feeling that this was not going to be a success. But this career pivot to entrepreneurship was awesome, a passion. I never wanted to look back. I never wanted to go work for a big company again. And I decided to go to business school. I was kind of like, okay, how do I work this entrepreneurship game? Like, yeah, I can go to another startup, and if it does become the next Google, that will be huge, but that's not likely. Or if I can get into a really good business school that's good at entrepreneurship, this is kind of like a now or never. I'm not going to do that when I'm 39. I'm like 25 right now. So let me see if I can get into a good business school and study entrepreneurship.
Do you feel, I've heard mixed reviews from people, especially sales people and sales leaders around business school. Do you feel like that was an instrumental part of, the rest of your career in setting you up the right way?
Huge.
If so, how?
Huge. And it's not for everyone. I think it's a fair assessment, Tom. I think in general, if you love what you're doing and you're thinking about going to business school so that you can go back to what you're doing, that's probably not a good idea. I'd probably take $100,000 and go on a sick vacation for a year. That's kind of what you're doing, basically. But yeah, if you want to like evolve your career or transition your career, if you're in consulting and you want to go into entrepreneurship, if you're in banking and you want to go into product management, if you're looking to do a career change in a career that is a feeder from business school, that's a very good reason. And another good reason is if you can get into a school that is a tier above where you went to undergrad. That is a good reason. So I loved my undergrad experience. Lehigh was an amazing school. I learned awesome skills that are you'd be surprised how many are embedded through many of the frameworks that I teach today. I did get an MIT undergrad and didn't go. That's kind of a different story. And, I think I think Lehigh would understand that like MIT is in a different tier, and I got into MIT, and, that's a contributing factor to it. And, for me, I started like 7 companies when I was there. I was just like helping startups that were started by alumni. I was teaming up with other students from China and all these great places on learning about those ecosystems. So that it was a great move for me. Yeah.
And so was Hubspot just the one of those 7 or 8 that you started that happened to stick?
It was. So, and it kind of dwarfed with HubSpot in a way. So at MIT, like a lot of business schools, the first semester of the 4 semesters is required. So you take the basic like economic strategy, finance, etc. And then the second semester is when you start to take your electives. And I was just like all into entrepreneurship. So I took this class taught by Howard Anderson, who's the founder of Yankee Group and the founder of, I think one of the co-founders of Battery Ventures. And it was called New Enterprises. It was all about entrepreneurship. And the first day of class, every student wrote up a 2-page business idea. So there was like 60 students. And we had to read them that night and vote on our favorite 2. And whoever got the most votes, the top 12, would present their ideas at the next class. And everyone that didn't get picked would join the company. You know what I mean? And like kind of work on the business plan while we went through the class. And Hubspot was my idea, and I got picked. And I was like, this was like, Facebook wasn't even around then. This was like MySpace, Classmates.com were kind of the big ones. And it was right at the beginning of the social networking, social media wave. And I was just so intrigued by the fact that you could build a website and everybody else would build the content. I mean, I know that's like how the internet works today, but we had no idea. And I was doing all these research papers on it. In fact, I was introduced to one of my, I later TA'd the class, and one of my students in the class said, "Oh, you should meet my boyfriend, Eduardo. He started a company in Harvard with this guy, Mark Zuckerberg, called Facebook. If you're studying social," and I was like, all right, cool. And I went up there, and Mark Zuckerberg was busy, but Eduardo came out, and we had drinks in Harvard Yard, and he told me they were just launching their second school. I think it was American University. And then like I was texting Reid Hoffman when he was kind of like starting this thing called LinkedIn. It was like a crazy like thing. Oh, let's I was like, I got to do this in like the pet space where if people could exchange dog sitting, which exists today, I think like Rover's kind of like that, but it was just like, that was putting it way over the edge into the sharing economy. And so it was like an idea that I think society wasn't ready for. And I just executed terribly. Like we just didn't know how to build these things, So anyway, that was my idea. I got picked, and it was funny too, because the person that presented after me, who was also in the class that got picked, was Dharmesh Shah, the co-founder of HubSpot, and his idea was HubSpot. So I remember him going after me, and he had the HubSpot logo up there, and it was a kind of a different idea back then. But we became really good friends. Like we really hit it off. I think I sat next to him on the first day, and we would like grab, dinner or lunch quite often. And then when the summer between the 2 years, I was able to convince some investors to give me $1 million of seed capital to hire an engineering team and build out Hubspot. And Dharmesh heard about it. He's like, I would love to invest. Because he had made some money on an exit prior to school. And he's like, I have one contingency though. I really like, working with you. Would you work for me half a day a week on Thursdays on HubSpot? And you can have the rest of the 80 hours a week to do Hubspot. And obviously I'll pay you as a consultant. I'm sure you could use the money, as you're going through this. I'm like, yeah, that'd be awesome. And so that's how Hubspot happened. That's kind of what it was. And that's how I got introduced to HubSpot.
So when Hubspot eventually, closed its doors, it was more of the natural conclusion for you after spending probably a few years at that point, like consulting at HubSpot to go over there.
Yeah. Did you read? Yeah. I don't know. I've talked about it a little bit. Sorry, I cut you off. Is that what you were asking about? Is how did that happen? Or
yeah. And just, I'd love to hear one, just to confirm that, but two, I think a lot of folks that are interested in early stage sales they wonder where to start. Like they wonder what type of company to
join. That's a good question.
And so I'd love to hear your take on
that's
HubSpot
a really good
just
question.
In general. Yeah.
It was luck, honestly, for me. It was just luck on having sat next to Dharmesh. It was luck on him investing and asking me to be a consultant. And then, yes, I did run the company my second year of business school. Hired a couple of great engineers, awesome guys, awesome people. And then I didn't go through the recruiting process, and I ran the company for the year after school.
Yep.
It was kind of, and I was still doing the day a week with HubSpot. About I don't know, 6 months into me working with Dharmesh, he was like, hey, I've been working. There's a guy that kind of helped me figure out the HubSpot idea. He went into venture capital for a little bit, but it doesn't sound like it's working out. His name is Brian Halligan. And turns out he wants to come, and Dharmesh was like, I promised my wife I'd never run a company again, because the last time I was so miserable. And so I think Brian has agreed to run the company and be my co-founder. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I met Brian, and then he emailed me after and was like, hey, I like you. I'm glad you're on our payroll. And however, I know you've been kind of helping Dharmesh with the strategy. I'd like to reorient all of your time to sales. So I think we're good on the strategy. Can you just go out and try to sign up customers every week and every month that we have your time? So that's how I got into sales. It was just not intentional. I was in business school knowing I wanted to be on the revenue side, but I was torn between sales and marketing. I think I liked sales because it was belly to belly, where the action was, especially in B2B software, my background was. They tended to make more money, which is important to me because, I knew I'd be the family provider. And I liked marketing because honestly, the MBA at the time prepared you more for that, because it was a very much more data-driven thing. I think that's changed in the last, 20 years or so. But, that's how I got into sales. And I think in that 6 or 7 months of working with them while I was running Hubspot, after Brian had repositioned me, I think between Brian and I, we sold 40 or 50 customers for HubSpot. And yes, now we're about a year out of business school. I was married to my kid's mom, and she got pregnant, wasn't working. We decided to move into her parents' house while we had our first child, and then a couple months later got pregnant again, which is I would not recommend doing it that quickly, but it wasn't intentional. But Zane is upstairs, and now he's 14 and a blessing, so it's all good. But so then I had to buy a house to put these babies in. So it was pretty stressful. I think there is a learning there. It's there's never the right timing to do a startup. And I had $100,000 in loans, no money, a single provider to the family, a baby, a mortgage, and a new baby on the way. And I was doing a seed funded startup. And I just couldn't get the Series A for Hubspot. And fortunately, Brian Halligan had sent me an email saying, he didn't know that, but he's really good at these provocative emails. And he said, you should quit your startup and come run this, build out the sales team here. I really like what you've been doing on the sales side. and we're about to do a Series A. So come on, they had hired Mike Volpe as head of marketing, and that was it. It was the three of them, and they're like, you should just be the fourth person and build out sales. And so I was kind of thankful for that moment, because I thought I was going to have to like hang it up as an entrepreneur and go back to a big company, which I really is not my passion, but I had responsibility. And I was psyched when he said that. I didn't tell him that because I pretended like my startup was doing awesome so I could negotiate a good contract. But yeah, I honestly thought I'd just be there for 4 months and collect a salary and stabilize myself. And then 9 years later, we have 2,000 people at the company. We're ringing the bell on the New York Stock Exchange going public, which that whole ride was not like all fun and games. It was one of the most stressful things I ever did, but it wasn't what I thought we would be doing.
Yeah, that's amazing. What would you talk to early stage companies, I imagine, all day long, all week long, in terms of, investing, advising, things like that. A lot of the folks listening to this probably aren't in the position where they're investing in early stage companies, but they might be looking to work there. Would just be curious, like, what would you, if you were starting your career over now as a salesperson and you wanted to get in early stage to the next HubSpot or wherever, what would you be looking at? Would it be the product? Would it be feeling out the founders?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Tom, that's good. And thank you, because I forgot through that whole rambling that I didn't even answer your original question, which is like, so the whole point was like the whole point was I got lucky, right, with HubSpot. I think some of the underlying themes I think that are really good takeaways there are, I don't even know if there is an entrepreneur out there that has never failed. From Jobs to Musk to, like everyone, even Drew Houston, like that was not his first startup. He was with us at MIT. His first startup was Accelerator, his SAT company. So I think that's like the whole point, is like entrepreneurship is not like start one company and like either sales succeeds and fails, and then if it fails, you just go back to a regular job. No, it's riddled with failure. It's the majority. And it's like, that's kind of the difference, is whether you look at that failure as a learning moment and move forward with each one. And I think eventually you'll succeed. I don't know if I can think of someone who's been in the startup ecosystem for like many, many, many decades and didn't at least taste one success, and hopefully there's more. So that's one thing. The other thing is, directly to your question, product market fit is poorly understood. And that's what I'd be looking for, is product market fit. And what I would be looking for is how engaged and successful the existing customers are with the product. I'm very, like, I've put a lot of research and rigor and a lot of data points behind that answer. It's a pretty unique answer. If you talk to other folks, other people, big market, team, technology, all that kind of stuff, that's important. And you should do that too. But that's like one thing I'll often say is like, go find a company with just, a lot of customer engagement, a lot of, big setup rates, big usage rates, big retention rates. And I don't even care that much about revenue generation, because that's your job, is to come in.
Yeah.
And that's why, like, I love product-led growth today. I would go to a PLG company if I was starting my career. I would go find a company that has like, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 weekly active users, daily active users, and they're growing and they use it every day and they haven't made a dime yet. Oh, that's a dream. I remember when Lauren Patterford was the first sales leader at Shopify. I remember him because I used to take these, I had an hour commute to HubSpot. So I would take a call from young sales leaders or entrepreneurs to and from work after we had like taken off and people knew about us. And I remember the call with Lauren, because he was like asking me all these, I'm like, how many, let me get a feel for where you're at. How many salespeople do you have? He's like, I have 5 salespeople. I'm going to hire 2 more this quarter. And I'm like, okay, cool. What are their quota is? And he had all these questions. And I was picturing a particular company, right? Size company. And then I'm like, by the way, how much revenue, how many customers do you guys have? And he's like, 75,000. And I was like, what? And I was like, how much revenue do you have? He's like, 100 million. And I'm like, dude, you have 75,000 customers and 100 million in revenue, and you have 5 reps going on 7. I'm like, dude, I was like, dude, you are going to be so rich after this one. Sure enough, what is that company worth? Like $50 billion. So that's what I'd be looking. And we could talk later if you want about my bullishness about product-led growth, but that's what I'd be looking at, like that, the ability to create that would be a lot of fun as a salesperson.
Yeah. I love it. And just maybe as a quick, before we get to, some rapid fires, if we stick on the topic of PLG, maybe you can just give a quick, for folks that aren't as familiar, like rundown on why that is so interesting to you, and maybe just like a quick high level definition as to how you think of it.
Sure. Yeah. So definition would be that the customer can experience value from your product without talking to a human.
Yep.
They can go to your website, download your product, and experience value. So I would loop like free trials in there too. I don't like those as much. I like a freemium, like a model where it's like you can use it forever as long as you're below a certain tier. Why is it so disruptive? Is like it's on par, in my opinion, with SaaS's disruption on the software ecosystem. That was a big deal. A lot of what's happening in PLG today reminds me of what was happening in SaaS in 2006. And so I think it's just not as pervasive. Like I think SaaS applied to like many different categories, and I don't think PLG applies to as many. Like for example, you kind of need a low time and effort to value use case to start. Like a Workday disrupting HR systems. Yeah, I'm not sure there's a PLG angle in there. It's really hard to create sustainable moats in many software categories. And these days, the customer is trained to gravitate towards little friction, right? And so if you have one company, let's say, going through like a free trial, like a demo request to an inside sales team, then and then the fact that you're passing it to an inside sales team, your opening price, it's got to be at least like what, 3,000 to 5,000 a year or something. To be able to pay for the cost of the sales per team. And then you compare that to another similar product where you can just like download it and use it for free. It's like apples to apples. Even if I've heard great things about the $5,000 a year product, I'm probably just going to like try the free one as a category. And so it's very hard to like undercut that. In fact, any category where they're starting out with an MQL fed to an inside sales team and an opening price of 5,000, the PLG attacker that starts free has a huge advantage. And when you build up the MQL model to a couple million, there's almost no going back. It's very difficult to basically disrupt yourself with a freemium offering. So it has such a nice disruptor. And remember what we talked about, like what should I be looking for? Lots of free usage, like weekly active users. You're right away honed in on that North Star metric, as opposed to a lot of other software businesses where they come out of the gate, let's try to grow revenue as fast as possible, and they have a leaky bucket and they don't have a lot of customer usage. Like freemium forces you to have product market fit first. So yeah, for the categories it applies, I'm very bullish on it. At stage 2 capital, where that's a big, that's part of we look for those attributes. We're not only PLG, but we do love the PLG attackers in every category.
I love it. All right, let me hit you with some rapid fires, Mark. Let the audience know a little more about you. First up, we're big book people on the pod. Would love to hear any books that have influenced you. Really, any genre is fair game. Doesn't have to be a sales or business book, but it certainly can be. Anything that's influenced you as a person or for your career.
All right, sure. Yeah, I'm a very spiritual person, so autobiography yogi. I'm also a big yogi, so that was the one. I got turned on to it because when I read Steve Jobs' bio, it said that was the only book he read every year of his life, so I had to check it out. And there's some really good life lessons in there.
Love it. How about other ways that you like to learn? I'm not sure if you're a podcast person, if you check out particular newsletters or blogs, or YouTube, whatever you like to do. Anything stand out to you that you've been getting into?
Yeah, I'm a big, I've done them all. I've read books, I've read blogs, I've read, I listen to podcasts, I do all that stuff. I think the blogs for me probably drive the biggest learning because you can I think every great book of 250 pages has been nicely summarized into a 2-page blog article somewhere. And so just efficiency of time, you get the good stuff and you can move so quickly as opposed to committing yourself to a book. So I do like just being engaged on a regular basis in the social media sphere and the blogosphere to learn. I also like just general old school, like talking to smart people. I'm very fortunate that every year I have 200 students at Harvard. I talk to 2,000 amazingly smart entrepreneurs. I get to talk to like podcast hosts like yourself who are on the cutting edge of things. And I go out there and speak and I challenge people to challenge my ideas, which I love. So just the general old school and digital networking, I just learn a ton from that.
I love that. How about what goes on in the headphones music wise for you, Mark?
Everything. I love like the modern, like whatever's, up and coming. I don't know, the past year, I've been listening to like Heat Waves and 24K and, Kid Leroy. But I also like, some of the real old school classics. I was a big Pearl Jam fan growing up and love Bob Marley, love the Grateful Dead. I'm kind of all over the place. I dabble. I played the trumpet growing up, moved to the harmonica, dabble with the guitar. I'm probably going to learn the ukulele next. I suck as a musician. It's my little side thing I do by myself, but I do enjoy some good music.
I've caught an itch I've never learned an instrument, but I've caught an itch to try to learn how to play the drums. So that's
nice.
That's maybe
awesome.
Maybe a side project I have coming up.
Yeah, just do it for fun. It's cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned yoga, you mentioned playing music, but anything else that you do outside of work that helps you recharge, or is it mainly those two things?
I run a lot as well. So I run every other day and I do yoga every other day. In the season here in New England, I play a lot of golf, which is a lot of fun with my buddies. And I'm a very dedicated dad. I try to leave a lot of space for that. I coach my kids' teams all the time, try to be pretty involved in their lives. And I'm a deacon at the local church, Old North Church. So all that adds up to a busy schedule.
Yeah, it's a full life right there. Are there any mantras or quotes or philosophies that you tend to live by?
Oh yeah,
or really like?
Yeah, I'll throw you two. Yeah, I do. This is part of my daily prayers. I do say, I strive to replace ego with humility, greed with service, and fear with faith. And another one I try to live by is, I have been given twice I deserve and taken twice. Given twice that I deserve and taken. This is so bad. I've taken twice that I deserve and given half that I'm able, but haven't many of us. And every day is an opportunity to close that gap. So those are some of the things I live by.
Are those both passages from the Bible,
just things I've come up with? Things I come up with. My favorite Bible is Romans 12. It's a lot about like understanding your unique individuality as your purpose in life.
This isn't a rapid fire question, but wouldn't you say, it seems like the answer is obviously yes for you, but that getting deeper in touch with your spiritual side, it sounds like both with religion and both, there's obviously a spiritual side to yoga, has helped you, obviously in your life, but even in your career as well, to stay more balanced and humble. And yeah,
definitely. And it's not for everyone, but it's like, I'm happy to speak openly about it. And, lots of times people don't bring that into the business world, and I'm not trying to like convert anyone or anything. It's just, you ask the question, and I'm fine being open about it. It's just not for everyone, but I think like, hey, try yoga out for sure. And don't be afraid to dive into some of the Sanskrit meanings behind things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. My last rapid fire for you, Mark, who would you want to come see next on the Millennial Sales Podcast?
I'll have to pick someone from the portfolio.
You got to.
Yeah, I know, like maybe someone over at Sales Impact Academy, like Paul Fifield, their CEO. I think they're doing some really cool stuff. So sorry, it's like having 26 children and having to pick one. So I love all our founders, but I think when it comes to what you're talking about, that's probably a really good one for you to kind of give it.
Yeah, I've met Paul. I've met a couple folks over there. He'd be a great one. Mark, want to be mindful of your time. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, and Tom, can I also talk real quick about just a quick plug on stage 2, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
So as we went through the career story, some of you may know that I went off to be a professor at Harvard Business School and built out the sales curriculum, and that dwarfed into building out the first venture capital firm running back by sales and marketing and customer success and RevOps leaders. So we're backed by 300 go-to-market executives from the best software, the most valuable software companies like Snowflake and Asana, Atlassian, and Salesforce, and all that kind of stuff. But the opportunities for your audience are twofold. One is we do have an accelerator program that we have open applications for now. These are, just after product development, we're giving $100,000 to each of them and putting them through a 10-week course. And those folks I mentioned, like the CRO of Zoom, the president of Salesforce, the CMO of a HubSpot, were all instructors in the course last year. So we got some really great legends to expose you to if you want to do that. And then we also have an Emerging Leaders Syndicate program where we teach folks how to think about investing early in your careers. So you can look at our Stage 2 Capital website and learn that as well. So if there's, sorry for the plug, but I do think I wouldn't be doing them if I didn't think they were value adding to the ecosystem.
No, that's amazing. So the best place to find both those is stage2capital.com.
Yep. Stage2capital.com. There's an accelerator tab and then an emerging leaders tab.
Awesome. And then for everyone else, go find Mark on LinkedIn. He posts some good content on there. Connect with him. Anywhere else we can send them, or that's the main spot?
That's the best place. That's the best place. Yeah. I try to be pretty active there.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you coming on, man. This is great.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for checking out that episode. Start of the year. Let's kick some ass. Again, one of my goals for this show is to get as many subscribers wherever you're listening here on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Subscribe, leave a review, and then hit me up on LinkedIn, Tom Malemo, or any of my other socials at TommyTahoe. Look forward to connecting with you there. Peace.